Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanto Swami Tinamine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pashat Deshatarine Vanchikalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhuvya Vasya Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Thank you so much, Assemble Bhakta Vrind ki Jai. Let me make sure that I'm recording it. Yes, it's being recorded. Okay, so we are basically going to continue session 2, part 2 of the chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarize. And as we discussed last Saturday, that this chapter, as the title tells, it's kind of summary of the Bhagavad Gita. So in Bhagavad Gita, we have basically 3 major sections where we are discussing about Karma Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and then Jnana Yoga. So this chapter gives us a glimpse of all those 3 topics. So the second chapter is basically Krishna is trying to help Arjuna answer his questions that he is raising in chapter 1, and at the same time he is trying to basically bring, help Arjuna come up. So that's what basically we are seeing in this chapter. Krishna is systematically going to answer Arjuna's questions, and then he will do more than what Arjuna's doubts are. So this is basically same theme or same context where Sanjay is watching into the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and he is telling everything to Dhritarashtra. He is sharing what's going on in the battlefield. So this chapter 2, has basically 5 major segments. So first segment is that Arjuna is not willing to fight, and he's accepting Krishna as a spiritual master. Then from verse number 11 to 30, Krishna is talking about Sankhya philosophy. Krishna is very clearly and in a very explicit way sharing Arjuna what is different between matter and spirit. And then from verse number 31 to 37, Krishna spoke about Sakam karma, the karma that is done, the action, the activity that is done for results. That's Sakam karma. So we are today going to read from verse number 38 to 72. And in that, in those verses, there are 2 sections. 38 to 53, Krishna is talking about Niskam Karma and Buddhi Yoga. And then from verse number 54 to 72, it's in-depth discussion about Sthit Pragya, a person who is liberated. So here is another way to look at what we have done and what we have to do today. So we spoke about Jnana Yoga. We talked about what is Jnana Yoga, very analytical understanding of the difference between matter and spirit. And then also we studied about Sakam Karma, which is prescribed duty with fruitive results. So these two topics we covered under section 1, part 1 of our discussion. And today we are going to talk about Niskam Karma. Niskam Karma is the work which is done without any attachment. Work which is done with detachment, not worrying about fruits of the action. And then also little bit we'll talk about Buddhi Yoga. Buddhi Yoga means engaging the activity with full intelligence in yoga. So what is yoga? We'll see the definition of the word yoga. So there are so many terms here like Gyan Yoga, Sakam Karma, Niskam Karma, Buddhi Yoga. So just to kind of make it a little broader and to understand what are the terms and terminology normally comes when we talk about this type of subject, you will hear the word karma. And karma in literal sense is basically prescribed activities. Then karma can be also bikarma and akarma. Bikarma is the abominable action or the action which is not sanctioned by authority. That is called bikarma. And akarma is basically not performing any prescribed duty, not acting as per one's prescribed duty is called akarma. So karma, bikarma, akarma, gyan yoga, sakam karma, niskam karma, buddhi yoga. These are some of the terms we'll be seeing as we are going along. And expectation is that we should be familiar with the meaning of those words as we go along. So niskam karma, that's basically our discussion today. And then the Buddhi Yoga. Those two are the topics for our discussion today. So Niskam Karma is working with knowledge and detachment. Working with knowledge and detachment. And verse number 38, in verse number 38, Krishna is advising Arjuna that fight as a duty with equanimity. So fight, you are Kshatriya, you get up and you fight without thinking about the results. And if you do that, then you are not going to incur any sin because you are the Kshatriya, so you fight. And don't worry for the results. And then we start talking about Buddhi Yoga. So in this chapter, basically, sometimes Niskam Karma, which is working with knowledge and detachment, is also used as a substitute as Buddhi Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. So what happens is that somebody can be engaged in Niskam Karma, maybe engaged selflessly, but intent might not be to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So yoga, whenever we use the word yoga, as you know, yoga is basically addition. Yoga is basically trying to link. So whenever Niskam Karma Yoga is done with the objective to please Supreme Personality of Godhead, then that Niskam Karma Yoga can be called as Buddhi Yoga or Bhakti Yoga. Okay, so as we go along, and when we are using these terms, if we do not pay attention to the words, then sometimes it could be confusing. So that is why we have to be aware with the terms. So Buddhi Yoga, so Niskam Karma is Buddhi Yoga when it is done with the intent to please Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Hari. Otherwise, if the Niskam Karma is done with some other ulterior motives or with some other objectives, then that Niskam Karma is not going to be considered as a Bhakti Yoga or Buddhi Yoga. So once we get to the later chapters of Bhagavad Gita, then Buddhi Yoga there, like in chapter 10, 9, there Buddhi Yoga is literally Bhakti Yoga. But here in this chapter, sometimes, Niskam Karma is Bhakti Yoga, sometimes it's not. So as we go along, I'm trying to keep it separate, but if some confusion arises, we can talk about that. So verse number 39 and 40 is basically talking about Buddhi Yoga, which is Bhakti Yoga. So what is Krishna saying about Buddhi Yoga? He's saying that Buddhya yukto yaya partha karma bandhanam prahasya. So Buddhya yukto, act with intelligence. And if you are acting with intelligence, then what that does, karma bandhanam. The bandhan, the binding that comes by our activity, okay, that binding is not going to happen. That binding is not going to occur if you act in Buddhi Yukto, if you act in Buddhi Yoga, Buddhi Yukto, literally here Buddhi Bhakti Yoga. If you are acting in Buddhi Yoga, then Karma Bandhan is not going to be arising from it. You are not going to be bound by the reaction of the karma that you'll be doing. That's basically in verse number 39. And 40 is a very powerful verse. All of you, I'm sure you might have heard it many times. Nehavi karma nasu asti pratyabhayo na vidyate shalpam apyasya dharmasya trayate mahatu bhayat. So Krishna is saying that in Buddhi Yoga, in Bhakti Yoga, there is no loss. There is no loss. Even if you do little bit bhakti, even if you have done little bit of the bhakti, that will save you from big sins, from severe misery that is supposed to come to you. Little bit of the bhakti, swalpa apyasya dharmasya, little bit bhakti that you have done, trayate means saving, it will protect you, it will protect you. Trayate mahato bhayat, the greatest fear that is supposed to come to you, the little bit of bhakti can protect you. So 39 and 40, Krishna is talking about Buddhi Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. And then right after that, he started sharing with Arjuna that how one can come to the point of Buddhi Yoga. So verse number 41, another powerful verse. Vyavasayatmika buddhi ekah kunandana bahu shakha hyanantasya buddhayo avyavasayinam. So vyavasayi, the word that is used here is vyavasayi. And vyavasayi means in Sanskrit, vyavasayi means a man who does the business. Basically, that's what it is. Vyavasayi means a man who is engaged in some sort of dealings. So Krishna is saying here that vyavasayatmika buddhi, the one who has a firm faith, or whose faith is firm, has only one goal. So vyavasayi does business, a businessman does the business. And what is the objective of that businessman? He is doing, if you talk to a successful businessman, you will ask, what's the objective of your business? They will say that making money. And whatever you do, at the end of the day, we have to make money. If you are not making the money, then you are not a successful businessman. Likewise, Krishna is saying that the one whose intelligence is firm and fixed, they work for only one purpose. And what is that purpose? That purpose is to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But on the other hand, there are people who is called avyavasayi. Abhyavsayi is the one, Bhahushakha Anantasya. They are trying multiple things, so they can get caught into the process of Jnana Yoga. They can get caught into the process of Karma Kanda or Karma Yoga, or even up to some extent, Niskam Karma. But Krishna is saying that be, Vyavsayi, and as super Vyavsayi, your intelligence should be completely fixed for one purpose. And that purpose is basically to engage fully in the pure devotional service. So that's very beautiful, verse 41. Then 42 to 43 is talking about unintelligent flowers of Vedas. Veda, Vada, Rataha means they are all people who are very expert in Vedic subject, in Vedic knowledge, like Ekavedi, Duvedi, Trivedi, Chaturvedi, this Sastri, that Sastri. All of these basically names, Duvedi, who is master of Duveda, Trivedi, who is master of Three Veda. There are 4 Vedas, right? Chaturvedi, who is master of the 4 Vedas. So they are all people who are Vedavada Rataha. Rataha is basically mugging, Rataha, it's basically in Sanskrit written as Rataha, but there is similar word in Sanskrit, it's called Rataha. Rataha means mugging. So they are mug, they will just memorize all the verses and they will know all the Veda, but they will not know the purpose of the Veda. Purpose of the Veda is that one can come beyond the mode of goodness and take the Bhakti of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So verse number 42 to 43, Krishna is saying that those people who are, Veda Vada Rataha, they are unintelligent because they are completely caught up into the flowery promise, flowery promise of the Veda, which is Dharma, Artha, Kama, and Moksha. They go highest up to Moksha, and they are caught into basically the flowery promise that Veda does. And who they are, what is the obstacle? Why one cannot be one point focused? Why one cannot be Vyavasatmika? So Krishna is saying that there are 2 reasons for those type of people to not have the firm, fixed faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What are those 2 things? Number 1, he is saying that they have a strong desire for sense enjoyment. And then second one is that they have material opulences and they want to basically enjoy the opulences that they have. So bhoga and yaswarya. Bhoga refers to sense enjoyment, uncontrolled senses, and yaswarya refers to material opulences. So Krishna is saying that the person who have these 2 things, whose senses are not controlled, and who have material opulences, and they are pride of their opulences, those type of people, they cannot have Vyavasatmika buddhi. They cannot have firm, fixed faith in the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then right in verse number 45, Krishna is saying that rise above the Vedic Karma Kanda. So, so come out of what the flowery Vedic knowledge has to give. What's the basically ultimate goal of the Vedic knowledge? Come above it. And what Vedic knowledge can do, what Veda can do, is that by following the dharma, artha, kama, one can come to the point of mode of goodness. Okay, so this Vedic, the Vedic tradition, following the prescribed duty, if one is following it, one can come to the stage of the mode of goodness. But bhakti is done in the mode of transcendence. Bhakti is basically in the Shuddha Sattva. So Krishna is saying that come out of this, karma kandi or sakam karma or even any, analytical study. Come beyond that and fully situate yourself in pure bhakti. Know the purpose of Veda. Know the purpose of the Veda. And then what is the purpose of the Veda? Purpose of the Veda is that we should take devotional service. Bhakti is beyond three modes. If one is in the Jnana platform, that means that person is dealing with Sattva. If one is engaged in prescribed duty, that person is engaged in mode of passion. Okay, somebody who is in vikarma and akarma, they are in ignorance. So come beyond mode of goodness and fully situate yourself in bhakti. So that's what basically Krishna is sharing with Arjuna, so that Arjuna can have one-pointed intelligence. So we'll get to the next section, which is 38 to 53. And here now Krishna is going to explain how to practice Niskam Karma Yoga. Okay, so we'll use the word here Niskam Karma Yoga. Niskam Karma Yoga. When we say yoga, we say Niskam Karma. Niskam Karma could be karma which is not focused towards pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But when we use the word yoga, we say Niskam Karma Yoga. Yoga, as soon as yoga is attached, we should, here in this context, we are talking about basically acting for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So verse number 47 to 49, Krishna is talking about how to practice Niskam Karma Yoga. And verse number 47, very powerful verse. Karma, most of you, I'm sure, familiar with this verse. Karmanya evadha karastu ma phalesu kadachana ma karma phala heturbhu ma te sanga asto karmani. Karmanya evadhi karastu ma phalesu kadachana. I think that's one of the verse that most of people who are coming from Indian background, they are very familiar with this verse. So Krishna is saying that you have a right to perform prescribed duty, but you are not entitled for the result. Wow, that's right. Here is the very technical definition of the Niskam Karma Yoga. What is Niskam Karma Yoga? Krishna is saying you have the right to perform the prescribed duties, but you are not entitled to the result. Second, never consider yourself cause of the results. So these two together, when we put, gives us the definition of the Niskam Karma Yoga. You act, but you act in a way that the results is basically undesirable. The result is something not undesirable, but result is something that you do not expect. Either it goes in your favor or it goes in your against. And never consider yourself, never think that you yourself are the doer. And that is going to be further explained in 3rd chapter, where Krishna will say that prakriti kriya karmani guna karmani sarvasva hankar vimudhatma kartahamiti mannate. The mode of goodness and mode of passion and mode of ignorance, these three modes are executing the things in the material world. But ahankar vimudhatma, the man who has no knowledge, thinks that I am the doer. So these 2 points are being made here to define Niskam Karma. And then in verse number 48, yoga, act in equanimity. Okay, the yoga should bring one to the stage of equanimity. So perform your duty. Being situated in yoga means focused on Supreme Personality of Godhead. And if you are in that stage, then either you success or either you fail. That's not going to affect you. And that is yoga. What is yoga? Yoga is basically acting in equanimity. Yoga is acting in a stage at the platform where the results, either it's success or failure, one is not impacted by it. These terms appears, when we talk about it, it appears something that everybody can do. But in reality, that's what the bhakti process is. Bhakti is helping us to come to that stage where we do not get impacted by the success or failure that we see in our day-to-day activity, in day-to-day lives. So 49 is also another beautiful verse. Dure nahi yauram karma. Dure nahi yauram karma. Buddhi yoga dhananjaya. Budhau shranam aviksha kirpana phala hetava. See, this auram karma. Auram karma is basically doing the things which are abominable, doing the things which are not favorable for Krishna consciousness. And if we are engaged doing such kind of activity, then that avaram karma will bind us in the cycle of birth and death. So dure nahi avaram karma. Dure na. If you know Sanskrit, dure na, stay away, stay away. Krishna is saying to Arjuna, very beautiful. Dure nahi avaram karma. Stay away from this abominable activity. And how you act? Buddhi yogad dhananjaya. O Dhananjaya, O Arjuna, stay away from the avaram karma and act buddhi yogad. Your buddhi, your intelligence should act for yoga to connect with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. If you do that, then you will come out of your illusion. Kripana phala hetava. The people who are trying to enjoy the results of their activity, of their fruitive activity, Krishna is saying that they are kripanaha, they are miser. So in very concise way, if we are engaged in our abominable activity, or if one is engaged in the abominable activity, and if one is basically enjoying the fruit, the outcomes of the abominable activity, avaram karma, then that person is basically binding themselves in the cycle of birth and death. And Krishna is saying that type of person is miser. Why it's called miser? Because human birth is given for higher purpose, to use it for higher purpose. But that's not how that person is doing. So he is misusing the opportunity that's given to him. So by these three verses, Krishna helped Arjuna to come to Niskam Karma Yoga. In this context here, helped Arjuna to come to Bhakti Yoga. So now Krishna is going to explain what is the benefit of acting in Buddhi Yoga. What will happen if you act in devotion? Verse number 50 says, there is no reaction. Getting rid of both good and bad reaction, even in this lifetime. If you work in the Buddhi Yoga, you are burning. You are basically getting rid of all the reaction. And in that verse, this word is used, yoga karmashu kauslam. So when I was going to school in India, in IIT Kharagpur has a banner. Each school has their kind of shine there, and IIT Kharagpur has that thing, yoga karmashu kauslam. And when I read that verse, I thought, what is exactly the meaning of the yoga karmashu kauslam? So after reading Bhagavad Gita, I understood what is the meaning of yoga karmashu kauslam. Yoga karmashu kauslam. Kauslam is expertise. Okay. expertise. And karmashu means activity. So one who is expert in doing the activity, in doing the prescribed duty, he does it for yoga. Or doing the activity or doing our actions so that we come in the stage of yoga. Yoga means in pleasing service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then that is the expertise of our activity. So that small word is like aphorism. It's very small, but it has a lot of meaning inside. Yoga karmasu kausalam. So be expert in what you are doing. And what is expertise of doing what we are doing? Not how expertly we do, rather how we take the result of that action and use it to fully situate in yoga, fully situate ourselves in pure devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yoga karmashu kausalam. So that's what Krishna is saying, that if you are engaged in bhakti, you are not going to get the reactions. And then verse number 51 says, no birth and death cycle. Janma bandha binur muktaha. Janma bandha, there is no bandhan of janma and mrityua. You are going to be binur muktaha. You are going to be coming out of that bandhana. How? Padam gachanti anamayam, by taking shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Padam gachanti anamayam. Padam means feet. Once you come and take the shelter at the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then you are going to be binur mukta from janma bandhana. From jan bandhan, you will be free. Very powerful chapter. So many important points Krishna is making here. Then verse number 52, Krishna is saying, now you have heard everything. Come up and be indifferent from the duality of the material world. Come up and don't stay in the illusion. And that verse uses very beautiful, very powerful word. Moha kalilam. Kalilam is forest and moha is illusion. So Krishna is saying that I gave you the knowledge now. I gave you the intelligence. Use that intelligence to come out of moha kalilam. Moha kalilam means this dark, dense forest of delusion. And I am into that forest still. I'm still into that forest, which is filled with darkness, filled with illusion, and so many attachments, so many connections, so many soft points, so many things. So that's why the very specific technical word used there is kalilam. Come out of the forest. It's not one or two or three things, okay? Once we get into the forest, what we see, so many disturbances, so many troubles, one after another. It's not one type of trouble. We have different types of creature. We have different, topography up and down, so many types of trees, huts, everything is there in the forest. And you are lost in that forest. So these words have deeper meaning into it. When we basically give lecture on Bhagavad Gita, we take one of these verse and then we go deep, very deep, moha kalilam, and take many kind of examples to make those points clear. But for intent of this course, we'll just try to kind of touch the key terms and keep on going. So moha kalilam, Krishna is saying that come out of the moha kalilam. And how?
Prabhu,
Yes.
Prabhu, is kalilam also means dirt, dirty, dirt?
Yeah, I'm not sure. Kalilam here, basically, I have seen the word Kalilam 3 or 4 times. It's also being used in Bhagavatam. And every time Prabhupada, Kalilam is, he is basically writing the meaning of Kalilam as forest. But if there is some other meaning, maybe, same word has different meaning in different context. Vidya, Vidya has 7, 8, 10, 12 levels of meaning. depending on what is the context. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, when he gives the definition of the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1 verse, he basically talks from the 7 different angles. Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Swami Maharaj, he kept on giving lecture on, first verse of the first canto, first chapter. So things have meaning in different contexts. It might have different meaning,
Okay.
but here, meaning of Kalilam is basically forest.
Okay, Prabhu, thanks.
Verse number 53, Krishna is saying that fix your intelligence, become achala buddhi, not achala buddhi, agile. Chala means agile. Don't make your buddhi chalaha. Don't make your intelligence so agile. Rather, make it achala buddhi. And then with achala buddhi, come to the stage of trance. So when mind is no longer disturbed, it's nishala by the flowery words of the Vedas, and intelligence is fixed in the trance, samadhi of self-realization, then you will attain divine consciousness. Very powerful instruction here. So when mind is no longer disturbed by what the Vedic knowledge or what this material world has to offer to us, and one is completely fixed in their intelligence for self-realization. See, very high stage, not impacted by the duality, and fully fixed in self-realization. Then you will come to the stage of Jivan Mukta. So right here, Krishna basically introduced the term Sthit Pragya. Okay, so Pragya is basically intelligence, and Sthiti is fixed. So here in verse number 53, Krishna is saying that fix your intelligence, and with that intelligence, if you are fully in trance, in samadhi for self-realization, then you are in a stage of Sthit Pragya. So as soon as Arjuna heard about this term, Sthit Pragya, he started asking, okay, so you are giving me, and see now, slowly and slowly, and as we are hearing, we are also coming up, as Krishna is sharing things to Arjuna. I think it's helping us. When I was reading, when I read and when I was writing this thing, it really gave me a lot of, beautiful understanding. I was very, very, excited to understand these things, in a broader way. So very, good points, very deep points Krishna is making one after another. So as soon as Arjuna heard about this Sthit Pragya, he started jumping and he started asking, okay, so you are talking about Sthit Pragya. Let me know more about Sthit Pragya. So from verse number 54 to 72, we are going to basically learn about Sthit Pragya and what is their quality. So in verse number 54, Arjuna is asking question. He's asking, Sthit Pragya ki bhasa samadhi sthita keshava sthita dihi kim prabhasheta kim asita brajeta kim. Sthit Pragya ka bhasa. So he is asking, ka bhasa. What is the general symptoms of a person who is in Sthit Pragya? That's first question. And that is answered in verse number 55. Then he's asking, Kim prabhaseta? How does he speak? And speak means, in dualities, speaking when he is blamed, or when he is hated, or when he is giving affections. So duality of the material world. So when he is exposed to duality of the material world, material activity, how does he speak, both internally and externally? How does he speak? And then third question is asking, kimasitaha? How does he sit? So here basically meaning of how does he sit means how he controls his senses, and that is answered in verse number 58 to 63. Second question, Kim Prabhashita, how does he speak, is answered in verse number 56 to 57. And then the fourth question he's asking, Kim Prajeta, how does he walk? And walk here means response to the sense objects. When he sees the objects of sensual pleasure, how does he act? So these are the four questions about Sthit Pragya that Arjuna is asking. Okay, Kim Bhasha, what are his general symptoms? So that is answered right after next verse, verse number 55. Prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmani yavatmanatushtaha sthit pragya taduchyate. One who gives up all material desires that arise from the mind, O Partha, and is satisfied in the self as servant of the Supreme Lord, is said to be Sthit Pragya. It's very clear, very clear. Who is Sthit Pragya? The person who is not, bewildered by the attractions of the material world, the desires that's coming in our heart. And the source of that desire is uncontrolled mind. So Krishna will talk about that, how to control the mind. So one who gives up all the material desire that's rising from the mind, O Arjuna, and is satisfied in the self, Atmaram kind of thing, as a servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So once, in very concise way, Krishna is saying that once one is fully situated in bhakti with the goal to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead without being impacted by the duality of the material world, that person is Sthit Pragya Taduchyate. That person is called Sthit Pragya. Jai. Then in verse number 56 to 57, question number 2 is answer. How does he speak? Sthit Pragya, how does he respond to the dualities of the material world? And how he does? Let's read it. Dukheshu anuvigna manaha sukheshu begat aspraha vitrag bhaya krudha sthit dhir muni uchyate. So undisturbed in mind amidst threefold of miseries, passion, goodness, or ignorance. He is not disturbed by the miseries that three guna is imposing. He is not elated when he hears a lot of appreciation, free from attachment, fear, and anger. Vitrag bhaya krudha. Such a person is called a sage of steady mind. Okay, so the word muni here, normally muni means the person, muni normally in the normal sense, it's been said or it's been known that muni have basically, like one muni from other muni, they contradict. Okay, so muni, two muni cannot be basically, most of the time cannot be seen aligned. But here, sthit dhir muni ruchyate. Once a muni come to the stage where he is beyond this duality, sthir dhira, he is completely, fixed, and he is aligned with the purpose of pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Then at that time, that sthir dhir muni can be called as Sthit Pragya. These verses are giving us goals. These verses are giving us kind of milestone as a devotee, how we should be kind of motivating and seeing our lives, how we should be seeing things in our life. These verses are giving us milestone to follow. Undisturbed in the mind amongst all three types of miseries, not elated by happiness, not being attached too much and free from the fear and anger. Such a person is called a sthit pragya. Then in verse number 57, Yah sarvarthana abhishanaheshas, Yah sarvarthan abhishanahas, tat tat prapya shubhasubham, navi nandati nadveshati tasya pragya pratisthitha. Unaffected everywhere in this world. Wow. But whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praises it nor despising it. Such a person is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. So this is a technical definition of sthit pragya, how that person acts, not affected everywhere in this material world. I don't know, this is something very, very high. And not impacted by good or evil. He's not praising or he's not despising. He's fully fixed. That's why that word samadhi, trance, is used, because he is fully fixed on one goal. Vyasatmika buddhi. We read that. Vyasatmika buddhi. Now his buddhi is fully fixed in pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And he is completely keeping himself away from all types of distractions. So then we go to verse number 58, how sthit pragya does the sense control. Yada samharate chayam kurmo anigniva sarvashaha indriyane indriyarthabhyash tasya pragya pratisthita. One who is able to withdraw, just as the tortoise draws its limb within the shell, his senses from the sense objects is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. So this is a very famous verse, and most of the devotee is familiar with that. How a devotee controls their senses, that example is given here. That the way tortoise, controls its limbs. When it sees that there is an opportunity to serve Supreme Personality of Godhead, so sthit pragya, a devotee who is fixed in their consciousness, when he will see the opportunity to serve Supreme Personality of Godhead, he will come out and he will engage himself in the service. So if things are in favor of devotional service, anukulenu krishnanu, if he finds that things are favorable for Krishna consciousness, he'll come out and he will act. But as soon as he will find things are not favorable for Krishna consciousness, he will withdraw. So that's the definition given here, how a devotee should basically use their senses. We use our senses if there is opportunity to please Supreme Personality of Godhead. If the opportunity is against of our devotional service, then we withdraw our senses. So through that verse, basically Arjuna is being taught that how one should use their senses in the pleasing service of Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, what is the time? We have 7 minutes. I think we'll go a little late. So in next few verses, we are going to basically learn how to control the senses, how to come out of, we heard now we set a very big milestone for ourselves, that we don't have to be impacted by duality. We are not going to be praising something which is good, not going to basically criticize if something bad. So all of that is basically a milestone for us now. We have to get there. So how we can get there, that's basically is discussed here, that how one can come to the stage of sthit pragya. And this is beautiful verse. I'm sure many of you is familiar with that. Vishayah vinivartante niraharasya dehinaha rasam varjam rasopi yasya pram drishtva nivartate. Though the embodied soul may practice to restrict his senses from the sense objects, the taste for the sense objects remains. So one may artificially try to restrict the senses, control the senses in artificial means. But what happens is that the desire for sense enjoyment will still remain. But one can seize it by experiencing the higher taste, then slowly and slowly, slowly and slowly, the propensity for sense enjoyment, for sensual pleasure will go away. Pram drishtva nivartate, pram drishtva nivartate. Once we see the higher taste, the lower taste will automatically go away. And Hiranyakashipu, we can see the example of Hiranyakashipu. See how much sense control he did to please Lord Brahma, right? I mean, if you read in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, he did such a severe tapasya that there was just bone, right? And his body had become basically the heel, and all the insects and everything had eaten him, everything. So how much sense control one need to go through that type of stage, completely out of all sorts of pain and pleasure, and completely in trance. But what happened? He pleased by his service to Lord Brahma, and Lord Brahma came and gave him boon. And as soon as he was awarded the boon, see how he turns into and what he started doing. He became number one sense enjoyer, and he started setting up his Aswarya, opulence all over, right? And he said that now I am the Vishnu, everybody should worship me. So that's the example to look at, that artificially, for some short-term goal, if one is trying to control the senses, but the senses has basically suppressed, senses have been suppressed, it has not been really controlled, then when time comes, it comes up, and it comes up very, very strongly. So here, the method that's given is that engage yourself in higher subject. And by engaging ourselves in the higher subject, slowly and slowly, slowly and slowly, slowly and slowly, slowly and slowly, the propensity, the desire that we have to enjoy mundane subject, that desire will vanquish. And this process is basically very, 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 very automated, very, very automatic. It's kind of very, it's a process that's very, very not natural. Okay, so all we try to do is that we try to engage ourselves in the higher activity, and by doing that, slowly and slowly, the taste for lower things are going away. And that's the process given for the sense control. We do not try to artificially suppress the senses. So in next 4, oh my God, somebody signed into another. Okay, Hare Krishna. So can you all hear me? Hare Krishna? Hari Bol?
Yeah, we can hear you, Prabhu. We can hear you.
Okay, thank you. I got some message on my screen. I wanted to make sure that I'm still okay. Okay, so the next 4 verses, Krishna is going to explain what will happen to the person who has not controlled his mind and senses. So verse number 60 says, even wise are distracted by the senses. Okay, everybody is distracted by the senses. And then verse 61 says, but the sense control is possible only by devotion to Lord Krishna. There is no artificial way that one can control the sense. But the sense control will happen only when one is engaged in devotional service. And then in verse number 62 to 63, Krishna is saying, what will happen to that person whose senses are not controlled, whose mind is uncontrolled? What will happen to that person? Dhyato vishayam pumsha shangas teshu pajayate shangat sanjayate kama kamat krodha vijayate. While contemplating on the sense object, he develops attachment. And with that attachment, from such attachment, lust, the kama arise. And then kama krodho vijayate. With that strong kama, he becomes angry. So this is basically verse number 62. 63 is saying, krodhad bhavati sammoha sammohat asmriti bibhmaha asmriti brahmasad buddhi nasho brahmasha. This is basically brahma. So asmriti brahmasad buddhi nasho buddhi nashat pranashyati. So once anger is arising, then from that anger he gets completely deluded. Shamohat asmriti vibhramaha. And then when delusion is basically arising, then what happens? His memory gets completely bewildered. And with that bewildered memory, he lost the intelligence. He loses the intelligence. And when he loses the intelligence, he falls down. So the root cause of the fall down. And here fall down is basically referring to falling us down in the cycle of samsara. Okay, the cycle of repeated birth and death. So how that happens, how that cycle happens? We all have the human body, and we are in this lifetime, we are trying to become devotee of Krishna, but in our previous life, we have been fallen. That's why we have this life. So how that process works? The process that works is called, the way it works is that we are contemplating on the sense object, the sense pleasure. The sensual pleasure is so prominent that it creates attachment. And from that attachment, kama comes. And with kama, anger arises. And from anger, delusion comes. And from delusion, the memory gets bewildered. And by bewilderment of the memory, we lose intelligence. And what happens with lost intelligence? Krishna is saying, Dure nahi aviram karma. That, the big karma, the karma that we should not be doing, we start doing. And we say, who is Krishna? Who is God? Who is Supreme Personality of Godhead? Why this? Why that? So many things comes, and so many things becomes goal of our life. Why? Because we have lost our intelligence. And once we lose our intelligence and we try to find shelter in everything else except Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we are fallen down. And when we are falling down, means we have to come and go, come and go, come and go. So that's the process given here, that uncontrolled mind can basically make us fall down and keep us in the cycle of birth and death. Okay, let's move to the next slide.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, can you give one example to understand this ladder?
This is basically, this would be like, we, just take the example that it will take some time. Is it okay? We'll go. Okay. So senses are so prominent. And just take a very, very crude example, that how somebody kills someone for money. It's a very crude example. Okay. So one brother, we are two brothers. Okay. we spent our childhood together. We ate together. We went to school together. We had everything together. But at some point, I came to that understanding that if my second brother is killed, then all of the property that I have, it's going to be mine. I'll become the, this is a very crude example to make the point clear. So what happens? That if everything is mine, then I'm going to enjoy my senses up to highest stage. So now we are contemplating on the happiness of the senses, right? That everything is mine and now I'll be the enjoyer. So what happens is that by that contemplation, attachment develop. Oh, how can I get it? How can I make it happen? How can I make it? And with that attachment, the more you think about something, the deeper it gets into it. Okay, so attachment, the highest level of attachment is karma. So now your attachment could be superficial. Okay, sometimes you could think something superficially, and then you get on something else. You can get on something else. But when that attachment has turned into karma, then it gets deeper into your heart. Okay, and then it becomes basically you, that how can I fulfill this desire? And in order to fulfill that karma, now you make the plans. Okay, so this anger basically here referring to that you may make a plan to kill somebody. You make, so you'll be making the plans. How can I basically fulfill that karma? Okay, and with that karma, when you are making the plan, you are completely deluded now. You are not thinking about what is good, what is bad, what is the consequence of it. They say that how, many times we come to the point where you see how a man who has little bit of the brain can do like that. How somebody who has little bit of the understanding can do like that. I mean, come on, it's very simple. It's very obvious how you did it. Sometimes our son, our kids does something. Come on, how you can do it? It's so simple to understand. So that's the delusion, They are completely deluded now, all because of the karma. The karma is so strong now that the basically delusion has happened. His intelligence is completely deluded. His thinking is completely kind of, lost. So he basically completely lost who he is. And then, the seventh item is loss of intelligence, complete loss of the intelligence. And what happens? He does that, heinous crime. He kills his brother to get what he wanted to get. And by doing that, he incurs great sin. And then by that sin, he has to come back. So that example can be seen even when we can take the example of Hiranyakashipu or take the example of Ravan. Ravan, the whole dynasty of Ravana was annihilated, was vanquished by Supreme Personality of Godhead with one contemplation Ravana had, that he wants to enjoy Mother Sita. With that contemplation, everything he started doing, it turns into his karma. He was sending, see how younger he was. He was sending his son one by one every day. All of the greatest personality, Megnath and this Nath and that Nath, all of them were getting killed one by one. Still, how he was. He had, and Ravan at that time, or even in today's context, Ravan was not ordinary person. When it comes to knowing the Veda, when it comes to knowing the Sastri, he had everything. But just one contemplation that he had, that he would like to enjoy Mother Sita, how he was dragged down, and so many hurdles, one after another came, and he was not able to see that. Our dear Duryodhana, okay, how many times Krishna gave him opportunity? Did he see that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Hari? He could not see it. All he saw is that how I can kill Pandava and become the king. Okay, so these are some of the examples where you can see that the contemplation, when it turns into a strong karma, then how everything becomes so unnatural for that person to perceive, which is very, very obvious, very, very easy for anybody else to perceive. So that's what Krishna is saying. Krishna is saying that these senses, if it's not controlled, if the senses are not controlled, these senses will drive you very crazy. And ultimately, it will drag you down to the point where you will act like a madman. And when you will act like a madman, you will become madman. And when you become madman, you will be coming into the cycle of samsara, okay? Cycle of the birth, death, old age, and disease. You are not going to get out of it. So that is why you have to control your mind, control your senses. But was it okay? Can I move to the next one?
Okay, we'll waste it now. Thank you.
Okay, Hare Krishna. Thank you. So the next verse, I think I went, hold on. Okay. So next verse is how Sthit Pragya engage his senses. I think I might take 10 minutes more. So verse number 64, now Krishna is saying that, prasadam, once you attain the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then your attachment will basically diminish and your dvesa will diminish and the control of the mind will come. So we have to receive the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Guru Krishna Prasade Paye Bhakti Lata Bij, by associating with the devotee and a spiritual master, by associating with saintly person, we receive the mercy. And when we receive the mercy, then slowly and slowly our distress will start vanquishing and our intelligence will be start fixing. Our intelligence will start seeing things as it should be. And then in 66, Krishna is saying that unless and until you are not in peaceful condition, unless and until you do not come to the stage of Sthit Pragya, in fact, there is no happiness for you, okay? And this is beautiful verse. Nasti buddhir akutasya na cha yuktasya bhavanaha na shabhavayatah shantir asantasya kutoshukam. Asantasya kutoshukam. Unless and until you are not shant, unless and until, when we say the shant, means unless and until our mind and intelligence is not fixed, okay? Unless and until we don't have fixed intelligence and a steady mind, there is no happiness. This ashanta mind cannot give us happiness. And then verse number 67, Krishna is saying that the agitated sense carry away the intelligence, okay? So if senses are roaming on different sense object, then it's very, very hard to basically come to the point of Dvasatmika Buddhi. It's very, very difficult. So if senses is making you fly, you'll keep on flying. That is why you have to come to the steady intelligence. And then 69 says that Sthit Pragya, day is night for karmic, for materialistic, and for the and the night of the materialistic is day for Sthit Pragya. That's very common metaphor that we cite many times, that a person who is in a full Sthit Pragya, a person who is fully situated in trance, in pure devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, their activity, their night is day for the karmic people, for the materialistic people. And the people who are fully enjoying the sense enjoyment, fully engaged in the object of the sensual pleasure, their day is night for Sthit Pragya. So that's how the Sthit Pragyas, is defined. That what they do, Vaishnava Kriya Mudra Bhujana Bujhai. Chaitanya Charitamrita says that the person who is in advanced stage, their action and their activity, it's very hard to understand, because what they are saying as a night, you will say as a day, we will say as a day. And what we are calling as a day, they are calling as a night. So two types of intelligence, Sthit Pragya intelligence and material intelligence. Sthit Pragya intelligence is focused on soul. Okay, Sthit Pragya intelligence is acting on the basis of soul, but the material intelligence is working on the basis of sense object. Okay, so that's the difference. Okay, the Sthit Pragya is going to act on the basis of soul, and he's going to do the activity which will help the soul to come to the super soul, come to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, where the material intelligence is acting based upon the sense pleasure, and they are going to act and they are going to do things which is going to be for the sensual pleasure. That is why this day-night difference is given, because their objective, their action, their line of sight is completely different, completely different. So that's what up to this point Krishna explained, that how Sthit Pragya engages his sense. And then this is the second last slide. So verse number 70 says that a Sthit Pragya is unagitated by desire. And example is given that the ocean is always still, although it's being filled with many rivers that entering from so many places and so many, at so many places, rivers, small rivers, big rivers, all of those rivers are coming and entering into the ocean. But ocean is not impacted by it. And this is a very beautiful example, very beautiful example. In fact, this is an example that we should also try to keep in our spiritual life, that when we are doing bhakti, we see so many distractions, so many disturbances, this thing, that thing, tons of that. But we should be like the ocean, completely fully situated in our goal. Our goal is that how I can, whatever intelligence Krishna has given us, whatever is given to us, how I can use it and how I can please Supreme Personality of Godhead, okay? And then there is another layer of distraction. But, we have to find a way that we should not be getting impacted by the distractions. An example is given here, like the ocean. Ocean is not impacted by rivers coming in or rivers, even going out. So that's the Sthit Pragya. Sthit Pragya is fully fixed in a Supreme Personality of Godhead, in the Bhakti of Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then verse number 71 talks about quality of Sthit Pragya. What is the quality of the Sthit Pragya? That Bihaya kamam yah sharvan pumash charati nispirisaha nirmamo nirhankara sha shantim adhigachati. He has given up all objects of the sense enjoyment, and he does not have any desires. He has given all senses of possessiveness. Okay, I am this, I am that. That possessiveness he has completely given up. Such a person alone can attain the real peace. So we are seeing here, it says that Pumsham Charati Nihisprasaha. He does not have any desire. So that something need to be defined. Does not have any desire. That doesn't mean that he does not have desire. Okay. So real desirelessness, and I just wanted to kind of explain that having the desire for the satisfaction of Krishna. Okay, so we do not become desireless. We are not nirvishesha shunyavadi. Okay, we are not the person who think that there is no variety and everything is shunya. So that's not the point here. Here, being without desires means basically having the desire which is needed for our devotional service. Okay, having the desire to build a temple, having a desire to go for Harinam Sankirtan, having a desire to have tons and tons of books being distributed, having desire to be a good preacher, having desire to be expert in Vedic study, having desire to get our Bhakti Sastri, Bhakti Bhagavad. These desires are needed. because these desires will help us fully situate in Krishna consciousness. But we do not want our desires, which are so much about sensual pleasure. Okay, so pratikul desire is not what we want. We want anukul desire, favorable desire. And then verse number 72 talks about what is the destination of the sthit pragya. Sthit pragya is basically Brahm Nirvanam. Okay, that is the way of the spiritual and godly life works, attaining which is not bewildered. If one is thus situated even at the hours of death, one can enter the kingdom of God and attain a deathless form. So destination of Sthita Pragya is that he's basically going back to home, back to Krishna. He's fully situated in pure bhakti, pure devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And by that, the word that is used here is deathlessness. He's completely liberated, and he is free from the cycle of birth and death. That's why the word deathless is used here, because he's no longer caught into the cycle of samsara. So these are the basically verses that we have in chapter 2. The last slide that I have is that each chapter in Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavad Gita is basically spoken to enlighten the conditioned soul, to bring us to the point of bhakti. Okay, so Bhagavad Gita is discussion between Supreme Lord and his devotee. Okay, Supreme Personality of Godhead is talking to his bhakta. So when bhakta is talking to Bhagwan, what is the topic? Bhakti. That's the topic. So although Krishna is talking about Jnana Yoga, talking about Karma Kanda, Karma Yoga, Niskam Karma, or Buddhi Yoga, finally the real essence of all of that we studied is to come to the point of bhakti. Krishna is helping Arjuna to come to the point of bhakti. So in this chapter, there are 4 verses that's talking about bhakti. Verse number 40 talks about there is no loss in this process. Bhakti is eternal. Whatever we do, that will stay with us. And then 41 verse is saying us that bhaktas are fixed. Okay, they are fixed, and their goal is fixed. They know that whatever I'm doing at some point to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then verse number 45 is sharing with us that bhakti is beyond the material body. Okay, this is beyond that three gunas. And then 61 is teaching us that sense control is possible only by dedicated bhakti unto Krishna. There is no other way that we can control the senses. Rather, sense control will come only through the process of bhakti. So that's all I had for chapter 2. And I think now you can go ahead and work on your remaining lessons. Finish chapter 2 lessons, and then write one of the essay. Many of you have already sent me your homework up to lesson 4, verse number 38. But I would say that please go back and complete the remaining lesson and send it to me. One advice that I would like to give you is that when you come to a content-specific question, please do not answer based upon what you think or what you know. The mark that you are going to get is basically how you are reading the purport and how you are writing your answer based upon the purport. My presentation has 55-60% of your homework answer. So that's why I'm not sending the copy of the presentation, because we have to little bit do some work also. So PowerPoint presentation has so many things that you can just copy and paste and you will be perfect answer. So that is why, I think better for you to watch the, lecture, the recorded lecture, do some, we have to take some pen and also try to give the answer based upon Prabhupada's purport. This course is designed to help us read Prabhupada's purport. So for content-specific question, I'm looking for the answer that's coming from the purport, not something that is somewhere else. That's number one. Number two, for essay, I'm requesting all of you to basically stay within the theme. So each essay has some guidelines, given, some markers given that, try to think along this line. So you have open space to go and answer things, but make sure that you are following the channel. You are not going out of what is basically,